UX design has been phenomenal over the last 40, 30 years. And today, businesses appreciate how user experience can be that crucial differentiator. And the demand for these roles is really high, yet the expectation versus reality can be anything but clear. So just a bit of context, my background, I've had 16 years of experience in varying sizes of companies, mostly blue chip, big organizations, and some startups, but generally I've worked internally. So that's the kind of context for my talk. I've worked in these companies in various different guises, in different ways, and each company values user experience in different ways. So I think that's an important thing to state. So our story begins today in the boardroom. In my mind, this boardroom has this kind of wooden panelled walls, and it has leather seats. You've probably got that picture in your mind, a bit like The Apprentice. I'm not sure why that's important, but it kind of underlines the gravity of this conversation in an organisation. So the organisation has a successful legacy product, but there's an increase in competition. So now there's no clear differentiator because of this new competition. They now look like the expensive option. They're like the Stella Artois of the industry. Churn is starting to increase, so customers are starting to leave the service, and satisfaction scores are starting to decrease. So this is exactly the challenge that us as UX designers really thrive on, and exactly why I enjoy doing what I do. Now the folk in the boardroom all use the latest smartphones and tablet devices. They look at their iPhones and they look at the product that they provide to their customers, and they think, wow, there's a bit of a gap here. The experience that the customers are getting already on these new devices is not the same experience that we're giving through our product. And unanimously, the board agrees that UX is that big ticket item they want to crack. And this is something you see in a lot of big companies now. They all realize this is the differentiator, this is the thing they need to do, and they need to figure out how they do that. Now, they of course have limited funds to achieve this, and after reviewing consultants and agencies, they realize that actually maybe an in-house UX strategy is the best for their company. And the reason they usually think that is because they're retaining that IP, that intellectual property around the understanding of their audience and how they can forge a new kind of direction for that business. So what kind of expert do they need? Well, of course, they need an expert who knows the solution. And of course, what they want is someone who's going to change the fortunes of the business, someone with that extensive experience who is confident about the way forward. Perhaps inadvertently, the business has set up this expectation of an infallible employee, and anyone coming into that role will hold the perception that they can't be seen to make mistakes. That somehow they always make the correct decisions, and they can instinctively understand any given audience, including the user needs, without any kind of research activity. And then alongside this, there seems to be this kind of interesting subtext. We don't need to change anything about our organization, about our product, or the people in the organization to become more user-centric. Just one new hire or a few new hires can actually get us over that line. And what we've got there is this example of traditional thinking. And when businesses go and seek these experts, these all-knowing, all-confident souls, we open that door to traditional thinking. They think in traditional ways. So they're craving things like validation. So if you're a hiring manager in these organizations, you want to prove to your bosses that you've made the right choice. You want validation that you've done the right thing. And consequently for the person, the candidate taking on that role, they also want validation that they can provide that solution as well. So you've got this kind of evolving expertise notion building. And there's also other things in there. So there's social status. They crave titles and rules and order and process. They kind of think that getting this company back into a more usable, a more exciting, more compelling product is a process you can go through. And at the end of it, at the end of this reductive process, you'll end up with something better. And of course, that's not always the way. It's not always the way. Of course, there's nothing wrong with all the things I mentioned. We all love a bit of social status. We all love having great job titles. And we all love a process. It's very defined. It kind of makes sense to us. But a lot of businesses can't behave like that. It's literally a very expensive way to do things. If you take a step back, though, I just want to look at the word expert. And here's one definition from dictionary.com. A person who has specialist skill or knowledge in a particular field. And I've underlined the word specialist or authority. Now, I have no problem at all with the first part. We do have a specialist skill or some knowledge in a specific field, which we do. But when we talk about the word specialist and authority, we're starting to change the perception of what we are and what we provide to a business. Isn't the truth that everything we do is a delicate trade-off between the needs of competing audiences, development feasibility, and business goals? In Dr. Anders Ericsson's research, he asserts that it takes 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to become expert in anything. But when you think about UX, it's almost an infinite combination of user needs, business goals, and emotional states. To suggest that any UX designer can watch 10,000 hours of user testing results and be the expert and infinitely know the answer to every problem seems optimistic at best. And then to become a full UX designer, to do another 10,000 hours of design practice seems quite a big ask. So the question is, do UX designers have the authority on product development? And I say no. It is a collaboration. So this is a picture of a typical kind of organization I might work in. And you have those three core roles which develop the product. So you have UX and design, you have product engineering, and you have a product owner. It's generally a kind of agile process, with that small blip in the middle being the actual product. Each of those key roles play that critical role in making decisions on that product. And of course, you've got influences from the wider business. So you have your senior executives, you have your SEO experts, you have the sales team even, or even your customer support. All of these start to build that picture of what you're building. And our role as UX designers is to facilitate activities to shape or influence better outcomes. Sometimes communicating the vision to the wider organization, often taking impacts and feedback. New product developments are fragile seeds and which can be challenging to cultivate, and they can be destroyed in seconds. So it's something it's a wider team effect. So just to kind of back up this is Mark Kawano, former UX evangelist from Apple, and he says everybody at Apple is thinking about design and UX. It's not just designers. And it's that makes everything about the product so much better, much more than any individual or any design team. And Apple are generally quite secretive about their internal processes, but this is a snippet from an online interview a few years ago. He paints this picture not about a design culture, but a product culture. I've also read before that Apple only hires UX designers who are quite broad in their approach. The reason being, when any project comes up, they can flex and move and change their skills and disciplines to fit that need. And when you think about some of the things that we do as UX designers, we have a large number of skill sets, a number of activities or inputs, and we can flip, change, adapt based on the needs of the project to offer insight or vision. That blend of design and science which assists in cultivating a shared vision across the business, which is compelling and appropriate. But here's the thing. Are we specialists? Is all of our research rigorous with scientific controls? Do we care that our prototypes are not always delivered in real front-end code? How do we feel when our copy is scrutinized for spelling mistakes or poor grammar? Do we sometimes feel like we're the jack of all trades? Socially, this perception of being a generalist, being skilled at lots of different things, has this social perception that somehow we have less value. And we often hear this word, jack of all trades, and it's been reduced over the years to Jack. But if you look back at what that phrase was all about, it originated in the 17th century. And the jack of all trades, master of none, everyone knows that. The actual phrase was jack of all trades, master of none, but better than a master of one. The theory that actually having lots of skills is better than a narrow scope of specialism. So we're now back in that scenario where actually having lots of skills and lots of disciplines, being able to see the big picture, is actually more valuable to organizations. If you boil down our key skills as a UX designer, it generally falls into these four camps: these UX research, this information architecture, interaction design, and visual design. And a well-rounded UX designer, if we follow through any of those disciplines, with user research, we can gather insight on user needs and validate the experiences we create. With information architecture, we'll have a navigation system, signposting and wayfinding, which is understandable to users. With interaction design, we'll have a great sense of how a user can complete a task with complete satisfaction. And with visual design, we can develop a slick look and feel, which sells that exciting vision of the future. So there's no doubt about it. We wear lots of hats. But all of these skills are entirely complementary to internal development teams. And why is this important? Well, being well-versed in a wide range of disciplines means that the UX designer is well-placed to draw on information from multiple sources. This complements experts in the team. You see, one downside of having too many specialists in one team is what they call myopic thinking. When people have specialisms which are narrow in scope, they can lack the foresight or the bigger picture. UX designers naturally complement product development teams to join the dots and complement product development teams. So that helps us to focus on the objectives which increase user satisfaction. So diversity is really important. This thought of expansive, diverse thinking is key to the success of modern development teams. And when I talk about diversity, this could be diverse skills, diverse approaches, diverse hypotheses, and diverse opinions. Why is this important? Well, here's a few examples. So the underground map, a piece of classic design, but it wasn't designed by a graphic designer. It was designed by a technical draftsman, someone who drew electrical diagrams for a living. And you can see how the underground map developed from that concept, from that notion of electrical diagrams. And it was complementary. It created a new outcome which was innovative. And you now see the tube map in the same format all around the world. So this application of different thinking into something which was, at the time, drawn by cartographers, geographically correct, and now you've got something which is infinitely more understandable to use. Another example, so the Super Soaker, sort of bring it down a little bit, was actually developed weirdly by a NASA rocket scientist. So this was someone who worked at the Jet Propulsion Labs in California. You can see how the kind of two, there's something in there about the cross-pollination of ideas. And this one's even weirder. The contraceptive pill was developed by a devout Catholic. So there's some interesting kind of context. When you've got different thinking, you can start to apply them to other areas of your world, and you come out with better thinking. So you're probably thinking, well, okay, Graham, we're not experts and we do lots of things, and we're not specialists at any one thing. No, I'm not kind of sure that makes me feel very good as a professional. So here's a concept by a French anthropologist called Claude Lévi-Strauss. He terms the word bricoleur, which I think translates, and probably the French speakers in the audience, you can say this is kind of like a tinkerman or a DIY person. You can do it yourself. Basically, the bricoleur is adept at performing a large number of diverse tasks. But unlike an engineer, and when he talks about the engineer is this kind of hierarchical construct. It's this kind of, you do one thing, you do the next, and then you do the next, and it's a reductive model. that somehow you start with all the options and then you end up with the best solution. Unlike the engineer, he does not subordinate each of them to the availability of raw materials and the tools conceived and procured for the purpose of the project. So in theory, a bricklayer on a project in a development team will take whatever is available at the right time and use it. That means that you're not just expansive at the start of the project, you're expansive all the way through, constantly flipping and seeing different angles and looking at different things through the eyes of the user. And I think this is really important. This is how modern development teams tend to behave. And just to underline that, so an engineering model is this top-down, reductive process from policy, procedure to execution. And then bricklayer is this doing things with whatever is to hand. Bricklayers are focused on outcome, not process, not constrained by models or mindsets. They're aware of their environment, and that's really critical. They're resilient to change. We know in agile development teams that actually the story changes. You find new information about your users. It flips, it pivots in all sorts of ways. And we as UX designers have to be adaptable and kind of meet those needs. And it's also exploratory and expansive. So all the way through, you don't stop research. You continually do this. You're continually assessing and reviewing everything you do. So you could kind of think, well, actually, bricklayers do a lot of things, and they're kind of flexible. It doesn't sound very appealing as a professional, but then I'm going to make you feel a lot better about it. Here's a good example of bricklayers. I'm hoping everyone knows who this is, because I realise this is a long time ago now. This is the A-Team, so 1980s program where some former crack commando units were basically mercenaries to go and help people. And every time the enemy kind of pinned them down in a particular corner, they as a team came together to use whatever they could find in the environment to find and make their escape away from the enemy. So they're focused on outcome. They're looking at the environment, seeing what's available, and working together as that team to kind of figure out a solution. This is Naveen Jain, billionaire entrepreneur, so he knows a thing or two. He is probably his biggest startup, is that everyone would know, is probably Moon Express, so the organisation which is hoping to mine on the moon in the future. And he says, real disruptors will be those individuals who are not steeped in one industry of choice, with those coveted 10,000 hours of experiences, but instead individuals who approach challenges with a clean lens, bringing together diverse experiences, knowledge, and opportunities. So to wrap up, let's talk less about expertise, and let's talk more about team values. Let's reduce the emphasis on sanitized, visually biased portfolios and talk more about collaboration and less about expertise. So if we talk about the values, versatility, we can flex between different methodologies. We are creative about new possibilities despite the given constraints. We are flexible to work wherever, whenever. Engagement. We're not afraid of the unknown or to make mistakes. We ask questions continually. We challenge others as much as we are challenged. Openness. We foster that environment of trust and safe. Yes, there are bad ideas, but we like to hear them. We share experiences and, most importantly, mistakes, because mistakes are how teams learn. We encourage diverse thought because when we understand different perspectives, we might find the game changer. Just as a final thought, on Monday, TechCrunch broke this story about Apple's interest in a company called Omniphone. Omniphone are a cloud-based music platform. Now, interestingly, the speculation on this deal was, Apple did buy some select technology, so there were some benefits there. But it was not a full acquisition. It did not involve any of Omniphone's patent portfolio, which historically has always been a reason for companies to acquire a business. However, 16 Omniphone employees now work for Apple. To me, this suggests that Apple may have struck a deal simply in order to procure a functioning team with expertise in music streaming services. And of course, they are not alone. Many organizations are acquiring teams as a shortcut to gaining functioning collaborative teams. And this is where we are. We now need to focus on collaborative functioning teams rather than process and projects. So when you're on your next project, ask yourself not just what you can do for your project, but what you can do for your team. Thanks, guys.